What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Nothing But Skills, and in today's video we are going to be talking about the state of the game. I am so sorry for the mic quality. I am just out of town working on a special project in San Francisco, so I wasn't able to bring my current mic here. Now, I did want to do a summary for you guys, but I won't be able to do a traditional summary like I do for the state of the game. This state of the game was over an hour long, so what I did is I cut down the best pieces and parts I think you guys really want to pay attention to. They talked about a lot of really cool things, everything from how they're balancing all the weapons, and they even showed us some pretty cool graphs. They talk about the Famas getting an extended mag, but I'll let you guys watch that in this video. Now, there is an event going on, the Explorers event, from September 24th to October 15th, which is when they expect Episode 2, Title Update 6, to be released. But I'll let you guys get all this information from this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and we'll discuss more there. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video, but until the next one, Nothing But Skills is out.
Just so you know, TU6, Episode 2 are the same thing. It's the biggest update to the Division 2 to date. Episode 2 will continue the game's main narrative, and we are going into the Pentagon this time. So if you are out there and you're interested in narrative, I'm looking at you, Tinks, you will want to get into the Pentagon because there's some story to be found. There's also, we haven't talked about this yet, there's a new specialization coming in Episode 2.
Yep, pretty excited about that.
I know what it is. Frederick knows what it is.
We're not going to tell you right now.
We're not going to tell you. It's really cool.
We're going to show you pretty soon, though.
Exactly. In the coming weeks, you'll find out more about that one because it's very different. Based on all of the observation, not just from the PTS, but all of the months since the game has been released, all the feedback and data we've got, there's been a huge effort to revamp, I'd say, the core experience of Division 2, right?
TU6 is really about rebalancing the game across the board, making sure that we don't do little spot changes, but just take it as one whole big thing.
Exactly. So it's not just the PvP we talked about last week, it's not just the crafting and recal we talked about the week before. The gear game, we're going to go dive into that in just a second with Frederick, but there's a lot in TU6 and Episode 2. We should just call it Episode 2 because it's the same thing.
Let's just do that.
And we are currently planning to release that in mid-October. Well, at least, let's start with design intentions.
Yep.
Design intentions when it comes to gear.
Gear needs to be varied. Like we have observed a build meta that's solidifying, and we need to make sure that builds are broad, that you can build with sort of anything you want, that you can really choose the style of build you want, and it works and it's balanced. We also want to make sure that nothing gets too cheesy. And mostly in this patch also, we wanted to make sure that things are intuitive, make sure that you can have an idea about a build, kind of go out there and start gathering things with the targeted loot and make that build. You know, plan, take action, and see the results.
Yeah, so the targeted loot thing is new.
Yes.
We talked about it, if you weren't here 2 weeks ago, it's a new feature coming in Episode 2 where you basically go to your map.
Yep.
You hit a
D-pad
toggle,
up if you're on console.
and then it'll show you where you can find what you're looking for, basically.
Different brands, different gun types, all of that.
Exactly. So if you're looking for something, you now have a place to go and get higher chances of getting it.
Right. Me and my team, we make all the components, the actual gear, the talons, all of that stuff. And the gear sets are part of that.
Cool. So we'll come back around to that. Obviously, last week we covered some of the PvP things, but I guess missing from that discussion is the impact of all of these gear changes that are going to change the way that PvP is played.
You can't talk about PvP as just a set of features, because PvP happens when you use all of the game in interaction with other players.
Yeah, because
the whole gear meta, the talents, the balancing of the guns, all of that affects how PvP feels in the end, right?
Yeah. So last week we covered the some of the features, like which
new conflict mode,
ambushes. There's a new map in PvP. There's changes to the way that matchmaking is done.
We're removing stat normalization, so we're only running the PvP version of talents.
So all of that is definitely part of the way people experience the DZ. But then there's all that gear stuff as well.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I want to dive a bit deeper on the things that you are in there tweaking. You know, the nuts and bolts stuff, right? Balancing. Can we start with talents?
I thought you wanted to start with graphs, but let's start with talents.
No, we'll get into the graphs. So we'll go with talents, and then we'll go with weapons.
Right. So we went over every talent in the game and have adjusted them, buffed a whole bunch that were underperforming, either nerfed or changed into a more sane way. Some things that were overperforming or that were dominating. Changed some functionality on some things that didn't make sense. Overall, just the goal has been to make more fun talents viable to use in your builds. If you like the look of a talent, it shouldn't be a trap. It shouldn't be something that if you're building around this, it turns out it was awful. Like, everything should be much more viable after this patch.
What can you tell us about talent stacking in episode 2? Because that's the...
It's been a bombshell, let's be honest, to some of our hardcore players.
It's huge. I mean, it sounds like such a small thing, right? Talent stacking.
Yeah. So,
but it's huge.
So we have these, we call them basic talents, like things like Precise or Surge, or those things that like really are only a stat boost. So they're very passive, they're always on, they have no conditions, right? And the thing about them is we want to make sure that they're powerful, but if you make something powerful that you can have everywhere, you're going to have it everywhere.
Yes, I have hard hitting on every slot.
Hard hitting on every slot.
Right?
So instead, we decided to make each of them more powerful, but make it so that you can only get the benefit from them once. So if you have them in 2 slots, you're still just going to get the benefit once. And what that does is make sure that we can have them be powerful, but also make sure that other talents get use or are competitive, even if they have conditions or build requirements and stuff like that. Because turns out, once you do dive into those types of builds, that's fun. It turns out that there's a lot of fun little gameplay mechanics and challenges. I know, right? Whoa. Gasp. Trying to make the game fun. But I mean, it's cool, like, we heard the phrase, like, being a prisoner of hard hitting. Like, yes, you want lots of damage to elites, and you can get lots of damage to elites. But getting it by sacrificing all of your talent slots for hard hitting ends up not making for such a dynamic and fun build. And I know it's going to disappoint some people. Some people are going to say, well, what if I just wanted to go all in on that? Or like destructive or something like that. But really, then you can't have them be very powerful, because then it's the default choice everywhere. So that's the reason behind the change.
I still feel, at least though, that you still have the ability to have the all-in mentality, right? But your but your all-in mentality, if you are a glass cannon player, is just your all-in is making different choices now.
You find a spectrum of gun-enhancing talents.
Yeah, you're like, what can you tell us about weapons?
So part of the whole thing is to make sure that, let's be real, that no weapons are duds, and that there's no like, and that there's less hidden knowledge where, like, if you don't know exactly the gun model that's the best, you're underperforming. So we went through every single weapon in the game, went through a bunch of mathematical modeling, tested them a bunch against NPCs and players, and rebalanced essentially everything.
Okay. With that balance, what's the aim?
To make sure that all weapon types and all weapon models are viable in some way. Like, they'll have slightly different roles, but that they're all viable, and you're not going to underperform and not going to be hindered from, I don't know, making a build that can beat heroic or play in the dark zone with any weapon type that you choose. So this is like looking, you see it's squiggly lines for all of the different weapons. That's when you shoot, the damage goes up.
The flak stops reloading, right?
And then there's the flak, there's when you're reloading.
Gotcha.
So you can see kind of some weapons underperforming, some weapons overperforming. No big surprises there. And then we try to remodel the damage on them so that they all align a lot better, because they tend to have the same type of roles. There are no really bursty assault rifles per se.
Okay, cool. Can we just hard transition to the after TU6 image and take a look at where we're at now? So bringing everything way in line. All right.
Cool. Some of the considerations here are, what kind of mods do they have? Some things need to be stronger in baseline if they don't have as many mod slots, for instance, and so on and so forth. So they're not all equal. You're still going to find things that fit your build.
The tests that you've done here, are these unmodded or modded?
We have graphs for both modded and unmodded, for both with and without extended mags, for instance.
But at least you can see the intention here is very much to bring things much more in line.
And what that means to just a player is that if you pick up a gun and you like what's on there in terms of talents, and you like the feel of it, it should be a viable thing to use in your build.
Cool. LMGs, okay.
And LMGs, because of how vastly they differ in reload time and mag size, they ended up being quite different. But we modeled them mostly assuming an extended mag, just because like we're aware of the
fair
meta.
assumption.
And that's, you can see here the M60 vastly outperforming, and also outperforming assault rifles by a pretty decent margin as well. Whereas, well, you can see some guns really underperforming, like the HK and so on and so forth.
So all of these done in their optimal range as well?
This is assuming optimal range.
Okay.
But some guns, like the M60, that we knew we needed to take down, one of the things we did then was, well, it has a quite severe optimal range fall off. So let's just boost that instead, so it gains a little bit of an upside if it loses raw damage.
Cool. Let's take a look at the after TU6 image. There you go. Ooh, that's just so satisfying, man.
Nerdy graphs.
Ooh.
And this is with the max attachment as well, as you can see in the title.
I like it. Really cool.
So those are the type of things we've been doing, but also actually testing them in real content as well. Because
I think people now have seen and experienced how you've been
our
handling
intention, at least, yeah.
All right. So I guess let's talk about what you've been doing with exotics, not just the Eagle Bearer, but all of them.
Yeah, Matt over at, shout outs to Matt over at Red Storm, who helps me out with some of the exotic stuff like that. Went through all of the exotics, and you've seen some of the adjustments on PTS Wave 2. And our goal is really that they should be awesome, because they're exotics, if you play to their strengths. Like if you do the thing that makes them exotic, which is mostly the talent, they should perform really well. And that's why kind of the raw damage output went down, while the talent output went up by the equivalent amount at the end, once we'd patched in everything. And you've kind of seen the similar adjustments to the other exotics, and some exotics were just worse. Pestilence, for instance, that was just not viable. Yeah. And so we've done a pass on all of those exotics to make sure that they should be fun, should be extremely good if you play to their style.
Yeah. Gear sets are now 4 pieces and they've been rebalanced. So like we kind of alluded to before, there's a lot coming into TU6, but there's so many different, what may seem to be small changes on the surface, but change the gear game completely. The requirement of gear sets coming down from 6 to 4, and then opening up those 2 slots.
For exotics, for instance?
Possibly. We'll talk about those in a sec.
Named gear pieces?
Exactly. There's a lot of...
Yeah, the idea is to make a... So the gear sets are great because they're a shake and bake build. Like they'll do a thing and they say on there what they're going to do if you collect all of them. But by lowering the amounts required, it means you can do some combinations with other gear and really opens up for more builds. And it also meant that we could move the 4 pieces for everything out in the general loot pool. Like so all 6 current gear sets are available to anyone, even if they can't play the raid for some reason. But we also shifted it so that the backpack and the chest, which are like the big bragging right pieces, they're more powerful than the other pieces. Yeah. And for the 3 gear sets that were in the raid, those pieces are still exclusive to the raid.
Yeah, I think...
The other thing we've done, or we're working on right now, is make sure that there's no hidden knowledge in terms of what talent can roll on what brand. So like right now, some brands can't roll certain talents on their chest pieces or whatever, and we want to clean that up and make sure that, okay, if there's a chest piece talent, it can roll on any...
Named gear and named weapons are big. I can't think of a more elegant way to put it. They're big. There's a lot of them.
It should be exciting, yeah.
Before episode 2, there are currently, 2 in the game?
Yeah, and named didn't mean the same thing. They had a name, and they had some talents, which are from the normal pool. But what it really means now is named weapons have their own lore, their own presentation. They have their own special perfect talents, like perfect vigilance or perfect spotter or whatever.
I've seen the one that's been popping up on Reddit, the Iraldi chest one that gives you weapon damage if you don't take damage for a certain amount of time. And that one looks sick.
And they're variants of what are already in the game, but just slightly better. So they can be best in slot. And you can be excited when they drop because you know they have the potential to be best in slot. In the end, I think we're going to have 36 odd total with weapons and gear.
Yeah, I was going to say around 35. But they're, so I'm glad I was not too far off.
No, that's right.
Anyway, there's a lot. More than 10 times what we have now.
And, since we're talking directly to our audience, one of the things about the Dark Zone is some of them will be exclusive to the Dark Zone.
Okay.
There will be ones that you can only get in the Dark Zone.
The KSG shotgun. And we're going to talk more about shotguns specifically in just a second because there's some
We're going to
things
go through
we
weapon
need to talk
types
about.
as well, yeah.
Exactly. I want to go through every weapon type. This is going to be a long stream.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
But we're talking about cool stuff.
Chat,
so-
is it okay if we go over time? We're actually over time. We've been going 29 minutes.
There's a VOD later for the people that have to, make dinner.
I say keep it going. You're all right to stick around for a bit?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yes. Okay. The KSG shotgun looks like this.
Yeah, new weapon for this update. There's a.
What can you tell us about this weapon?
So you see how it has two sort of tubes underneath the main barrel? Those are the actual tube magazines. So that has
Okay.
two magazines parallel to each other that hold 6 shells each.
Okay.
So it's in the end, not on PTS, but in the end, it's a 12-shot shotgun.
Okay.
It's a pump, and one of those.
To be clear, the KSG is not an exotic. It is a new
Nope,
shotgun.
just
that
a new
can roll.
shotgun.
Okay. Because we do have an exotic coming in episode 2.
Right.
That is not a weapon exotic.
Odessa Sawyer, who you'll know from the Rooftop Settlements.
Yes.
This is her knee pads, and you'll recognize that she had something unfortunate happen to her leg, so you'll actually see these knee pads with bullet holes. And no, but the knee pads, so they do a fun thing, which is that they, among other things, exotics have lots of little quirks and details on it, but the big thing is that when you've done a cover to cover and you slam into that cover, you create an EMP.
That's cool.
Which is, it correlates to what happened to you on the way there and so on and so forth. But the big thing is you can fight these pesky robot dogs and whatnot using these knee pads without having to equip an EMP pulse or a jammer pulse.
Is the EMP... Is an element of the EMP based on distance traveled, like Nimble used to be?
I think so. Oh, we've iterated on these so much that I forget where we landed in the end. But I think there's an element of that. They've been on the PTS. People can try them out. That was not the final version, so we're iterating on them still, but they're going to be in...
Yeah. The good thing is these are very... I mean, if you're into kind of... what do we... like... fashion the division, like defashion. I think that's what we went with. If you're into fashion, the division, these knee pads are sick looking. And we actually have an image of these knee pads. They're probably the prettiest piece of gear that is going to be in the game. Can we take a look at... Ooh.
Agent apparel is also something I've heard about division fashion.
Agent apparel. I like defashion because it's kind of terrible. But
to sum up, like we've really put in new content. There's new content to play, the new spec, rebalanced everything, all of that. One of the things I wanted to really bring home is that some people have put a lot of work into their builds. Some people have been showing disappointment with the fact that some component that their build is predicated on has changed in some way, and that they need to remake their builds or refarm or whatever. We know, we're aware of that. It was a conscious decision that if we're going to do a major rebalance, we're going to do all of it at once, this patch. This is not something we intend to do often. This is a huge endeavor. And we know that there's going to be new builds and new meta, and that's exciting, but that also means getting new pieces, which is why we've added so much new pieces into the game as well. So we're aware that that can feel daunting to some, but this is the patch where that's going to happen. This is the rebuild patch.
Weapon family by weapon family. SMGs in episode 2.
Let's talk about SMGs. So SMGs weren't really viable. They were underperforming in terms of raw damage. And a lot of them are kind of quirky. We have ones with big magazines, no extended magazines, so on and so forth. So they've almost all universally gotten a buff. Some of them a lot, some of them less, but like all of them should be now competitive. But we also made sure that in the final version of this patch, we've taken away critical strike range as a feature in the game, which means that if your build is predicated on critical strike, which SMG builds tend to be, you're not going to have to keep track of the range to your target.
Okay.
That feature is just gone. Shotguns weren't in the PTS.
Oh, okay. I was going to save shotguns for last, but fine. All right,
Sure,
we'll do shotguns
yeah.
now.
So
'Cause that's the big one.
shotguns also had some problems in the end game. They're kind of bursty, but you kind of need to be able to use them against, elites and whatever. So shotguns have been changed to roll damage to armor.
No melee damage anymore.
No melee damage bonus anymore. It was an experiment, wasn't working. Damage to armor means that they can scale a little better into endgame when you face more enemies with armor. We're going to keep track of and do more testing to make sure that they have the appropriate PvP scalers so that doesn't run away from us. But we want shotgun builds to be viable.
What's happening to the Famas? People are so obsessed with that gun.
Right, so, the Famas was a problem because we didn't have, quite frankly, a model for the extended mag. So it didn't have a mag mod slot. Now it's going to have a mag mod slot, which means that you're going to have extended mag, so it kind of scales better into endgame. And yeah, she's going to join the family.
I see a section here on movement. What?
We have people, animators, coders, whatever, who are experts in movement, and they have to do work too.
That's good news.
So we never stop iterating and doing things. So the guys and gals upstairs have really focused on making sure that like vaults are snappier. You can go around corners on flat things now, which you couldn't before. Making sure that starts and stops from sprint are snappier, less inertia. You can combat roll after you drop down from a heavy landing now, which is a new feature if you want to maintain your momentum when going over high drops. Just all around, we'll probably never keep like iterating or stop iterating on.
We're never doing this again.
On the core movement and the core feel of things. So yeah, I'd love
really
to hear
news.
feedback on how snappy things feel.
Is that in the PTS?
Some of it.
Some of it, not all of it. Okay, no, we'll definitely keep an eye on that for when episode 2 comes out, because that's been something that since the start of the game, people have kind of, it's been in the back of people's
discussion,
minds. So really cool. Also, I love this one. You can now
on quality of life. This is a good one.
This is
for
a
me.
big one.
Yeah.
Can switch specializations through the loadout system. So you don't need to go back to the base of operations to switch loadouts.
Yeah.
I mean, to switch specializations.
What can you say? That's good. But
No
it
arguing
did,
there.
Well, I mean, what it did mean is that it saves the spec with the loadout. So what if I want to use my, DPS loadout with 2 different specs? So we realized people are going to need more slots. So there's also more loadout slots for you.
Okay,
Yep.
bonus.
Yeah.
That's great.
Twice the amount. Hipfire has always been a discussion in PvP. The fact that people kind of play at pretty close range and dance around each other with hipfire. We've tried this on the PTS Wave 2, and hipfire now forces you to walk. So it's a panic maneuver, and you're walking, kind of look like the Terminator. It should radically shift the kind of close range dance and favor good aim.
Heals are no longer going to heal enemies. Cool.
Yep, chem launcher, those things that leave clouds. You can no longer get healed by enemies, which means that you can't be, you're not as afraid of where you drop them as you were before.
I think it's fair to say that's been driven by community feedback.
That's totally community feedback, absolutely.
So thank you. The Thieves' Den vendor has been improved. Cool.
But he's now a vendor.
Now a
and
vendor.
he sells cool stuff for currency.
Solid improvement. The other thing that I saw the other day, which I loved on the PTS, is all of the UI feedback to make things a little bit more clear as to what's happening. Because you would have situations where like, oh, something killed me.
Right.
I don't know what happened.
And it's kind of part of the build game as well, because how can we have good, strong skill builds if we are afraid of letting skills do damage in PvP? And to do that, we had to go through them, make sure that they're dodgeable and readable, like that they give warning signs when they're used against you so that you can counterplay them. So there's been a huge push to make sure that they have like markers on the ground where they're going to blow up, lines when they're targeting you, all of that stuff. So one of the things that's still a big piece of feedback from our PvP players is that there's no real tactical counterplay in Conflict and in Dark Zone when you have constant pulse on you, because everybody knows where you are. It's a constant wall hack. Yeah. And so we did an experiment in PTS where we increased the cooldown of everybody's pulse in those contexts. And it kind of didn't feel good, because if your build was about pulsing and using spotter and whatnot, it kind of changed the feel of that. Especially when you were doing landmarks and fighting NPCs, your build stopped kind of doing what it was doing. So instead, what we've done is went in and made sure that you as a player can reduce how long you're pulsed. So in your spec, everybody's spec trees, the node that used to be crit protection is now going to be pulse protection or pulse resistance. So everybody's pulsed less just for having that. And then on Y'all gear, which is the Dark Zone unique gear, there's even further pulse protection, which means that even the most dedicated skill player, if they pulse you and you're wearing all of that, you're only pulsed for 1 second and then you're gone. If you've chosen to spec that way.
Okay, cool. That's super important. Yeah. Sorry to drag out the stream a little bit longer, but that is really
Stuff
good.
needed to be said.
Let's